Hey, it's Ashley and I'm back with another haircut tutorial. Today we're going to be doing a clipper cut with the number 2 guard on top, blending in the sides with our number 1 guard, and we're going to trim the bangs with our shears. So to begin this haircut, I'm starting off with my number 2 guard, and I'm going to begin at the temples and kind of work my way around the top of his head, leaving about 3 inches of his bangs left out of this clipper guard so that I can begin blending them with my shears later on in this haircut. But for now, we're going to go in with that number 2 guard, and as you can see, I'm just making sure that everything's getting cut down to that same size guard. I like to go on the sides a little bit lower with my clipper guard just so that when I'm fading up into my number 2 with that 1, I can know that, I have a lot of room to work with and that 2's cut down all the way. So just going in with that 2 guard, and I am just going to make sure that I am getting close to the bangs while still leaving some hair before we go in and blend that with our shears. So again, I'm just making sure everything gets cut down really well with that number 2 guard, especially when the hair is a bit longer. You want to make sure you are running your clippers over it a good bit of time so that you can get all of the hair. Now that I have my number 2 guard cut down, I'm grabbing my 1.5 open, and I'm going to just start blending into that 2 guard where we left off. So I'm just going back at that temple, and now I am blending all the way around back into the other side, all blending into that number 2 guard. So I'm just going in and making sure that my 1.5 guard is open, and then I am closing it, and I'm going back right below that and just tapping into the 1.5 guard with my 1.5 closed. So I'm kind of fading down right here, but I will go back later and just refade him because this haircut is pretty simple. This is in real time, and I really didn't cut out a lot of things in this haircut. Nothing is sped up. So I'm just going in, trimming everything down to that 1.5 closed, and then putting my number 1 guard on there and tapping that into everything we just faded. So my number 1 is going to be tapped all the way into that 1.5, and this will help for a really seamless blend. You want to make sure that you are going in and trimming all of this hair down to the correct length and fading it down. I'm going down instead of fading up from my 1 to 1.5 to 2 because this haircut starts at a 2 and I want to have some dimension in it, and I don't want that 1 to just go all the way up on the side of his head. So instead, I'm going to just fade a little bit more down, and then whenever I come back and fade up, we will tighten up the fade. But this is just to really give me a baseline and cut all this hair down. So I've been cutting his hair for a few years now, and we have a great time every time I cut his hair. He's very polite. We're just going to go in. I like to leave his bangs a little bit longer, and he knows that, so we always joke around. You can see here I'm going to taper in the back of his neckline. So I am just closing my clipper guard, and I am tapering it down, and then I am going to open my clipper guard and taper that into my 1. So I'm going to then put my 1 closed and go ahead and tap that into my fade, which is just a small taper. So once I have the back of the neck tapered down, I'm going to make sure that everything is nice and smooth, everything is even, and go in with my trimmers before I go ahead and do any shear work. So I'm not going to touch his bangs just yet, but we will blend those in with my shears. I just want to make sure that everything is faded really smooth before we go ahead and begin cutting that bang area, because you don't want to leave no bangs. You don't want to have 4 strands of bangs. So you definitely want to make sure that you leave you about 3 to 4 inches on the crown of the head to make sure you can go ahead and clean those bangs and blend them into that number 2 guard, which if you're cutting hair for a long time, you know that you can go ahead and blend into your number 2 guard with your comb. Your comb on one side, the side that is thicker, is a number 1 guard, and the side that's thinner is a half guard. So you can technically blend all the way into your half guards with your comb alone and your shears or your clipper over comb. But I prefer to go ahead and do my sheer over comb, and I know that I can safely blend in a number 2 with my sheer over comb and it come out really nice and smooth. So we're not going to go ahead and worry about that too much. I'm going to go ahead and clean off this client, make sure that I am getting all those loose hairs off of him. I really don't use a lot of powder whenever I'm cutting hair. I like to just dust off my client, use my blow dryer, and make sure that my cape fits nice around their neck so that there is no hair left over. So like I said before, we're going to go ahead and start our trimmer work. Starting at the sideburn, I am just lining up what he had already and going in behind the ears, making sure that everything is cleaned up. I'm using mostly the corner of my trimmers, so just about the last 3 teeth or so, to make sure that I can get a nice close cut. Whenever you are using your trimmers, you do have the entire trimmer, which I have a wall detailer, and they are a little bit wider of a blade, which is great when you're doing things like right here, doing the back of the neck. But when you are going around the ears, you do want to use more so the corners, because you want to go in and have like a lot of control. And if you use the entire part of your trimmers when you're going behind the ears, you're more likely gonna go ahead and give them white walls, which a lot of clients don't want to do. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing on that other side. I'm just gonna go in and clean up that temple area. I like to just clean up their natural hairline. I really don't like to cut into my client's hairline whenever it comes to simple men's haircuts, unless they are asking for a very like detailed, sharp, crisp C shape on the hairline. You want to go in and just clean it up. If this clipper guard would have been any longer than a 1, I most likely would have used my comb and really tightened it up with that half guard and everything. But in this case, I'm just going in and cleaning it up, since the 1 is a pretty tight guard, and I make sure that I get really close to the ears and the hairline when I am cutting with my clippers. So just to save myself some time and some detail work, I'm just going to use the long end of my clippers, and I'm following the back of the ears where they naturally just taper off with the hairline. And then remember, we did taper in the back of the neck, so I can just go ahead and clean it all up and blend it in. No line needed. And make sure you clean up your client's ears. Sometimes there are fuzzies, and check your eyebrows. My client's eyebrows look great. I didn't need to go ahead and clean them up. Now, after your trimmer work is finished, in this case, for this haircut, we have some of our bangs left. Now, I'm going to spray the bangs down, and I'm going to lift them up, pull them back, and I'm going to start blending them to match that number 2. So I'm going to meet it to that number 2, and anything that's sticking out, I'm going to cut it down, because if you leave it, it's your corner, and it's going to be very, very, very uneven. You don't want to leave that. So you're going to go in, and you can watch me right here. I'm lifting this hair up. And you can see I am using that angle by the temple where we took that number 2, and I'm just blending that into it. And then I am going to lift these bangs all the way up and cut anything that is sticking out from that 2. The reason you want to do this is because you're basically giving it a light taper into length. So you're going from that 2 to your longer hair, which you can see I'm doing by grabbing this hair and angling my hand slightly higher towards the forehead so that we can have a little bit more of a length in the front of the hair and match it to that length of the number 2. Now I'm going to go in and just even up those bangs. So I am just pulling it down, and you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Sorry, my arm was in the way. I'm just pulling down that hair with my comb and then trimming on top of my comb. So this will make sure that I am getting a nice straight bang, and that I am not really cutting it to, like, if you cut it down with your comb underneath, then you kind of get like not the true length of your hair, because your hair is going to do what it wants to do. So you might as well let it go on top of your comb and cut so that you can see the natural bounce of the hair in the bangs. So I washed my client's hair, and now I'm going to recape him, and I'm going to just fade him one more time, because we use clippers all over for this majority of this haircut, and clippers sometimes leave stragglers, and we're not going to do that. So we're going to go in, we're taking that number 1 guard closed, and I am just following right where I went. I remember I did a low number 1, right? Because I didn't want to make that 1 go all the way up. I want to keep some dimension, some fade, especially since that 2's all the way at the top. So going in, same thing on the other side, and then I'm probably gonna, yep, right there, I open my clippers. If you didn't see it, go back 10 seconds. I open my clippers. I don't turn off my clippers when I switch my guards. I don't turn off my clippers whenever I change my length of my haircut. I keep my clippers on for almost my entire haircut. If you watch my ASMRs, you'll hear that I really don't turn my clippers off. So now that I did that number 1 guard, open and close, I'm going to go ahead and take that 1.5 closed, and I'm going to start fading it into that 1.5 open. And then I'm going to open up my clippers, fade that in, and then grabbing that number 2 guard, I'm going to go ahead and clean up everything with that number 2. So just right where I began this haircut, starting at that temple, pulling it all the way to the back of the head. Starting at that temple, pulling it all the way to the back of the head. I'm making kind of like a horseshoe shape around the head so that we can leave the length in the bangs. So now I'm opening up my 2 to a 2.5, and then I am going to either grab a number 3 guard, which I didn't do previously, or yeah, I'm going to grab my shears. So taking my shears, I'm just going to clean up the work that I did earlier. Going back exactly what we did, the same thing, and just pulling up anything that was left behind. Sometimes stragglers are left. This is a tighter haircut. I want to make sure that my client has a nice haircut and looks great. So we are going to finish up, checking everything out, making sure that our client likes it, and just making sure these bangs are even and straight. Now we're about at the end of our haircut. If you stayed this long and learned something new, I really appreciate it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will have the before and after photos at the end of this haircut if you would like to check that out. I think he looked a lot cleaner. I mean, you can definitely tell in the before and after pictures. Sometimes it's hard when you watch this transformation in real time, but when you see the picture of him after and before, it really adds up, and you're like, wow, he did need a haircut compared to what he looked like and what he normally looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like to see these videos, I do have a Patreon. It is linked in the description below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my videos so I can keep making content for you guys. I hope you all enjoyed this. Here is my before and after. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.